This is just a sample of the audiobook. To get the complete audiobook, access the link posted in the first comment.
A Child's Christmas in Wales by Dylan Thomas. Read by Philip Murdoch. One Christmas was so much like another in those years, around the sea-town corner now, and out of all sound, except the distant speaking of the voices I sometimes hear a moment before sleep, that I can never remember whether it snowed for 6 days and 6 nights when I was 12, or whether it snowed for 12 days and 12 nights when I was 6, or whether the ice broke and the skating grocer vanished like a snowman through a white trapdoor on that same Christmas day that the mince pies finished Uncle Arnold, and we tobogganed down the seaward hill all the afternoon on the best tea tray, and Mrs. Griffiths complained, and we threw a snowball at her niece, and my hands burned so with the heat and the cold when I held them in front of the fire that I cried for 20 minutes, and then had some jelly. All the Christmases rolled down the hill towards the Welsh-speaking sea, like a snowball growing whiter and bigger and rounder, like a cold and headlong moon bundling down the sky that was our street. And they stop at the rim of the ice-edged, fish-freezing waves, and I plunge my hands in the snow and bring out whatever I can find. Holly, or robins, or pudding, squabbles and carols and oranges and tin whistles, and the fire in the front room, and bango the crackers, and holy, 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 ring the bells, and the glass bells shaking on the tree, and Mother Goose, and Struwelpeter, oh, the baby-burning flames and the clacking sizzleman, Billy Bunter, and Black Beauty, Little Women, and Boys Who Have 3 Helpings, Alice and Mrs. Potter's badgers, penknives, teddy bears named after a Mr. Theodore Bear, their inventor or father, who died recently in the United States, mouth organs, tin soldiers and blancmange, and Auntie Bessie playing Pop Goes the Weasel and Nuts in May and Oranges and Lemons on the untuned piano in the parlour, all through the thimble-hiding, musical-chairing, blind man's buffing party at the end of the never-to-be-forgotten day, at the end of the unremembered year. In goes my hand into that wool-white bell-tongued ball of holidays, resting at the margin of the carol-singing sea, and out comes Mrs. Prothero and the fireman. It was on the afternoon of the day of Christmas Eve, and I was in Mrs. Prothero's garden, waiting for cats with her son Jim. It was snowing. It was always snowing at Christmas. December, in my memory, is white as Lapland, though there were no reindeers. But there were cats. Patient, cold, and callous, our hands wrapped in socks, we waited to snowball the cats. Sleek and long as jaguars, and terrible-whiskered, spitting and snarling, they would slink and sidle over the white black garden walls, and the lynx-eyed hunters, Jim and I, fur-capped and moccasin trappers from Hudson's Bay, off Eversley Road, would hurl our deadly snowballs at the green of their eyes. The wise cats never appeared. We were so still, Eskimo-footed Arctic marksmen in the muffling silence of the eternal snows, eternal ever since Wednesday, that we never heard Mrs. Prothero's first cry from her igloo at the bottom of the garden. Or, if we heard it at all, it was, to us, like the far-off challenge of our enemy and prey, the neighbour's polar cat. But soon the voice grew louder. "Fire!" cried Mrs. Prothero, and she beat the dinner gong. And we ran down the garden, with the snowballs in our arms, towards the house, and smoke indeed was pouring out of the dining-room, and the gong was bombilating, and Mrs. Prothero was announcing ruin, like a town crier in Pompeii. Oh, this was better than all the cats in Wales, standing on the walls in a row. We bounded into the house, laden with snowballs, and stopped at the open door of the smoke-filled room. Something was burning all right. Perhaps it was Mr. Prothero, who always slept there after midday dinner with a newspaper over his face. But he was standing in the middle of the room, saying, "A fine Christmas," and smacking at the smoke with a slipper. "Well, call the fire brigade," cried Mrs. Prothero, as she beat the gong. "Oh, they won't be there," said Mr. Prothero. "It's Christmas." There was no fire to be seen, only clouds of smoke, and Mr. Prothero standing in the middle of them, waving his slipper as though he were conducting. "Do something," he said. And we threw all our snowballs into the smoke. I think we missed Mr. Prothero, and ran out of the house to the telephone box. "Let's call the police as well," Jim said. "And the ambulance. And Ernie Jenkins, he likes fires." But we only called the fire brigade, and soon the fire engine came, and 3 tall men in helmets brought a hose into the house, and Mr. Prothero got out just in time before they turned it on. Nobody